Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Kelly Boone here from Tech and Learning. Thank you everyone for attending today's sessions. Special thank you to our sponsors, Catch On, Classcraft, FileWave, Global Teletherapy, GradeCam, and Sanford Programs. And thank you to all of our association partners as well. Today's virtual conference is focused on taking the lessons learned from the current remote learning programs to create long-term plans that support effective teaching and learning both online and in person. I want to remind everyone to log into the Conference Hub using the link in your confirmation email. Once logged in, you can visit sponsor booths, see your agenda, network with over 1,000 attendees, access the event recordings in the download section, and of course, win prizes. You'll find the Passport to Prizes buttons hidden all over the portal. Every time you find one, you get an entry and we'll pull those winners at the end of the event. Before we begin, I'd like to cover just a few housekeeping items. One, this is a webinar, so although you only see yourself in the room, there are hundreds of people watching live. Also, if you have any questions for the presenter during the webinar, you can submit those through the Zoom chat feature. And please know that we capture all the questions and our presenters are happy to answer them as long as time permits. Today's slides and additional resources will be in that download section of the Conference Hub, so check back there before you leave the session. And then also remember to use the hashtag TLTechLive in your social posts as you promote today's event. So join me in thanking Marie Izquierdo for today's session. She's going to present us Closing the Achievement Gap, the road from recovery to restart. Go on, Marie.
Hello, and welcome to Closing the Achievement Gap, the road from recovery to restart. My name is Marie Izquierdo, and I'm the Chief Academic Officer in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, the nation's 4th largest school district. Today, I will be sharing with you steps that we have taken to continue to close the achievement gap during a time of growing inequities for our students and their families, as we strive to connect them with the people and resources whose life work it is to ensure the continuity of learning during this global pandemic. One that has halted schooling as we know it and threatens to halt the learning for over 50 million children in the United States. But first, let me acquaint you with the scale of Miami-Dade. The district sits in the southeast region of Florida and is a hotspot for COVID with nearly 17,000 confirmed cases to date. We have a teacher workforce of nearly 20,000. We closed our schools on March 13th and began phase 1 of distance learning on March 16th. Phase 2 began after 1 week of spring break, with attendance being taken and grades being assigned beginning April 6th. In 2012, our voters overwhelmingly supported a $1.2 billion general obligation bond that launched an initiative called Digital Convergence, bringing large investments in instructional technology ranging from infrastructure to Wi-Fi connectivity, devices, and professional development for our teachers in our schools. This vision and those investments were instrumental in our readiness to deal with the COVID crisis and our ability to react as expeditiously as possible in standing up distance learning for our students and their families. Miami is a very diverse community, and that diversity is reflected in our students. The most challenging aspect of that diversity is poverty, with many students living below poverty and lacking, among other things, technology and internet connectivity at home. Of course, most of us have read and continue to read the frightening headlines about the exacerbated summer slide, something that educators have become quite used to, but certainly not the magnitude of learning losses that are being forecasted and which some have coined the COVID slide. It's hard not to become discouraged when reading about the epic slide expected in math and literacy. With students already poised to experience the typical summer slide, plus more than a quarter of the school year out of school, that slide may seem unsurmountable. The achievement gap, which has been the North Star for many districts, a chasm too daunting to overcome. According to research from Northwest Evaluation Association, or the NWEA, an educational assessment not-for-profit, kids in 3rd to 5th grade typically lose about 20% of their literacy gains over the summer and 27% of their math skills. A new report from the organization suggests that coronavirus learning loss could be much deeper. The NWEA researchers believe that 30% of literacy and 50% of math gains could be lost. Additionally, it is anticipated that learning losses will be more pronounced in elementary learners who are more dependent on teachers for learning. In their study, based on a national sample of more than 5 million students in grades 3 through 8 who took MAP growth assessments, NWEA compared 3 trajectories of academic achievement during a typical school year for students in those same grades for reading and math. The first trajectory, designated with a solid line, showed no disruption to learning. The second one, the dashed line, showed the COVID-19 slowdown in which students maintained the same level of academic gain they had had at the moment when schools were closed. And the third, the dotted line, showed the COVID slide, in which students exhibited patterns of learning loss typical of summers throughout an extended closure. The forecast used March 15th as the starting point for school closures and the fall start of school as the end point. The COVID slide estimate suggests that students will return to school in the fall with about 70% of the learning gains they've already achieved in reading. In math, as I mentioned earlier, the picture is far worse. Students are forecasted to return with less than half of the learning gains. In some grades, the loss would equate to almost a full year behind what they would have had under normal circumstances. Look at grade 5 students and where they end up in terms of achievement in the fall post-school closures, assuming a fall reopening. They would be below where 4th graders ended up prior to school closures. A 2016 study from the Harvard Graduate School of Education asserted that many parents and their children don't think about math as existing outside the classroom. And so, students disconnect from math altogether during the summer months, while reading activities are often part of the fabric of our daily lives. As a result, when the school year ends, kids may have very few opportunities to engage in any type of mathematical thinking. Chris Minich, the CEO of Northwest Evaluation Association, says the activities parents and educators engage in between now and September are going to be really important to make sure that this learning loss doesn't happen. Because it is widely known that greater levels of connectivity, higher levels of parental education, greater availability of parental time for engagement, and in-home availability of books and materials strongly influence which families benefit most from distance learning, we have chosen to focus many of our efforts in these areas, distributing over 115,000 mobile devices, 9,000 internet hotspots, adding dozens of parent webinars on our Parent Academy virtual campus, providing teachers professional development on how to further engage parents during distance learning, and making print, digital, and audiobooks available to our students. Our mitigation plan has several components. First, continuing to support existing methods of communicating with homes is very important to us. Prior to school closures, teachers and students, many of them, had already had organic methods of communicating, whether it be through Remind, Edmodo, Google Classrooms, and other applications. It is counterintuitive to disrupt these organic methods of communication to stand up a single platform. And so we believed very strongly in continuing to have teachers and students utilize those practices that they were using in brick and mortar to communicate while we started supporting them and urging them to a single platform. Focusing on the most fragile students and zip codes first has also been a priority for us. We've created a dashboard that allows us to gauge need and prioritize students in different buckets. students that are migrant, homeless, lowest 25% proficient, English language learners, and students with disabilities. We've used Title I funded community involvement specialists and region and area personnel to visit homes when we see non-engagement on our portals and our dashboards. Ensuring connectivity is ubiquitous is a primary concern for our district and for our nation. We believe that internet connectivity is a 21st century right, civil right, and our students must and our families must be connected to the internet if we are going to strive for equity. We partnered with our local internet provider to ensure that parents had free or low-cost internet connectivity in their homes, oftentimes using our partners on our helpline, as well as providing our parents direct contact information for them to expedite their connectivity. We partnered with Sprint, another district partner, with the Million Project. Through that project, Sprint allowed us to provide students free of charge Samsung cell phones that worked as hotspots for many of the students that did not have coverage or the financial means to pay for internet connectivity at home. We certainly understand that Maslow must come before Bloom. Our families' basic needs need to be addressed and met before we can even begin to think of students being ready for learning. This includes a big effort in making sure that our students are fed. For many of our students, the meals they receive at school are the only ones they have on any given day. To that end, the district set up distribution centers using our food service employees and our food and nutrition department. Additionally, the superintendent of schools partnered with local restaurants to help families in remote zip codes and getting food directly to housing complexes so that they have food 7 days a week, with distributions even occurring on the weekends. Ensuring outreach to selected subgroups, such as the ones I mentioned before, the English language learners, the students with disabilities, our students that are in the lowest 25 proficiency zone, our economically disadvantaged students, or those on free and reduced lunch, is a priority and has to be very intentional and strategic for distance learning to actually be successful. Many times, we have provided door-to-door service for students that we see on our dashboards as unengaged, students not logging in to distance learning. We've provided text-to-speech tools for English language learners as well as students that are blind. We've created distance learning implementation plans for students with disabilities, as well as students that are English language learners, so that their families understand that the plans that we had for them in brick and mortar to meet their needs continue in the cloud. We've shifted services such as sign language translations, Braille transcription of lessons, delivery of assistive technology devices, and moving speech and occupational therapy to the cloud, even delivering multisensory kits and meals to students with the most significant disabilities, to name a few. Daily monitoring is part of our DNA. We use reports that we build using Power BI that track student usage, student logins to the portal, and other dashboards that are role specific so that different employees can use those dashboards to meet the needs of their functional assignment. Engaging parents is also vital during distance learning. Understanding that parents have to become partners while recognizing the strains on families during the pandemic is important. We have dramatically increased traffic to our parent university, which we call the Parent Academy, by creating dozens of new webinars available in a host of languages, ranging from cybersecurity to helping students exhibiting signs of anxiety during a crisis to navigating teams. You can see some of these webinars at the parentacademymiami.org. And finally, Developing thoughtful opportunities for preventing learning losses over the summer has become our main goal at this time. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. A few weeks ago, I read an article in EdSearch that highlighted a study conducted by Curriculum Associates, a leading edtech company offering reading and mathematics programming and assessments for students in grades K through 8. It highlighted the disparity in learning losses for economically disadvantaged students by looking at how usage of iReady, a Curriculum Associate product, for over 8 million students began changing a week, 3 weeks, and 6 weeks after school closures. The findings were very alarming. The findings in their analysis were in the aggregate and were not attributable to individual school districts. But being a data junkie, I had my data department reach out to them and request a report that only took into account students in Miami-Dade. This is what we learned. In the first week of school closures, the number of iReady users nationally dropped to about 40% of the average prior to closures. Usage recovered in the first 3 weeks, then leveled off in weeks 4 and 5 before jumping slightly to almost 70% of pre-closure numbers in week 6. In Miami-Dade, usage has remained stable, even in week 1 of school closures. We attribute the stability of this usage to instructional practices and expectations that have become part of the culture of Miami-Dade, practices that were in place long before COVID became a household name, practices that include the development and implementation of a comprehensive instructional technology implementation plan, a plan that led with high-quality digital content, not devices, the weeding of digital assets utilized in the classroom, and we have taken a less is more with fidelity type of approach. Strong professional development to support teachers in the usage of digital tools, and the weekly reporting tools that are shared at different levels of the organization, from Datacom at the cabinet level to data chats with individual students and teachers. Naturally, when schools closed, teachers and students leaned heavily on these assets. Here you can see the national trends in terms of proportion of pre-closure iReady users per week by school median income. National trends show, broken out by median income of the school's zip code, the divide is startling. All groups saw a large drop in week 1, but those from the lowest income group dropped to about 30% of their usual usage, while those in the highest income group only dropped to about 65%. Still, in week 6, usage is at 90% in the highest income group, while the lowest income group still has not yet reached 60% nationally. Here is the same data for Miami-Dade. Usage in Miami-Dade tells a very different story. While the drop in usage has been highest for the lowest income group, usage has not dipped below 90% for any income group in any week, except for week 2, which was Miami-Dade spring break. By week 6, all income groups were showing at least 95% of their pre-closure usage. Here is the average time spent nationally in iReady per week in grades K through 8 by school median income. Nationally, in the first week of school closures, the average time spent in iReady jumped noticeably in all income groups. Usage peaked in week 3 and has since leveled off for each group. Kids from the lowest income group who use iReady use it on average 6 minutes more per week than their peers in the highest income group. Here is the average time spent in iReady per week in grades K through 8 by school median income in Miami-Dade. Remember when I said teachers leaned on tools like iReady immediately upon school closures? Well, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But remember how I said that we monitor usage daily? Well, upon noticing this dramatic increase during week 1, we began working on phase 2 of distance learning, focusing on time on task cards, providing additional PD to teachers on other platforms, sending communications home to parents about expectations regarding screen time. As you can see, things began stabilizing shortly thereafter. The road to recovery and renewal for MDCPS can be summarized by this timeline. In early April, we rolled out phase 2 of distance learning with the 2.0 version of the Instructional Continuity Plan, with 2 days of on-demand professional development for all instructional personnel. We are currently in phase 2 of distance learning, which began April 6th and is due to end in the first week of June. We are working on models for the summer that include a summer A, a summer B, and an early start to the school year for selected students. Additionally, we are looking at stimulus dollars to help fund an extended day of school for a small group of students and schools in the urban core. We recognize that the road to recovery may very well take a full school year next year, with student achievement actually stabilizing in the 2021-22 school year. When students, educators, and administrators return to school in the fall, our classrooms may be different and potentially marked by larger equity gaps, substantial learning loss for many students, and exacerbated economic challenges for traditionally marginalized families and communities. While it is difficult to speculate on what missing months of school may mean for student achievement, research on summer learning loss has provided us with insight on how to address some potential impacts of this extended pause in traditional classroom instruction when students return to school. SOAR, Securing Opportunities for Academic Recovery, is Miami-Dade County Public Schools' initiative to mitigate learning loss for some of our most fragile students. For us, SOAR consists of 3 different buckets. The first bucket we call Recover. During this time, we have book distributions to enhance our summer literacy programs for selected grades. We are also running a Summer A for unengaged students during quarter 4. These are students that, despite all of our efforts, did not engage on a regular basis with their teachers during school closures. Their lessons will be more synchronous and will have more face-to-face, albeit virtual, time with teachers, and the lessons will be designed by district curricular staff. Additionally, we will be running credit and course recovery programming for students in grades 6 through 12 in Summer A to ensure that they keep up with their cohort and that they are not left behind because of credits. We will run our annual summer reading camp for selected rising and current 3rd grade students, since many of our 3rd grade students, if not all of them, will be automatically promoted to the 4th grade. We recognize that these students will be coming to 4th grade with huge deficits, and we want to ensure that we can support them in literacy throughout Summer A and get them ready for their next school year. And always, as usual, we will be running an extended school year for students with disabilities whose IEP requires a school year of learning. Our second bucket we call Regain. This bucket is to ensure that students that may still be on grade level continue to remain on grade level and even enhance their learning during the summer months. This includes all of our students across grade levels who will have access through the student portal to online resources called Summer Waves of Learning. During Summer Waves, we incentivize students with prizes that we give them in the fall when school opens so that they can maximize their learning. Some of them choose to learn another language. Others choose to accelerate their math. Still some decide to take up a coding class. Whatever subject and grade level, the e-learning toolbox in Summer Waves of Learning is rich with opportunities for our students to enhance and accelerate their learning. And those students that were in 9th and 10th grade this year who were unable to take the state assessments that are part of graduation requirements will be offered a virtual boot camp so that they are ready for their Algebra 1 end of course exam and their English language arts state assessment upon returning to brick and mortar. We want to ensure that they graduate with their cohort and that they do not fall behind. And finally, the third phase of SOAR is restart. During this phase, we are hoping to use stimulus dollars so that we can provide an early start for targeted students, about a quarter of the students in our district. Those students that are targeted will be students in the lowest 25%, many of them with disabilities, as well as English language learners. And we will have an early start to the school year for them at selected schools. Additionally, we are looking at extending the school day for more schools than we have in the past. We currently have 15 schools that offer an extended school day, an hour a day for the duration of the school year. We are looking to maximize that and grow that to about 25, mostly fragile schools in the urban core. This will affect students in grades 3 through 8 and will provide many extra days of learning for them to be able to meet and close the achievement gap. And finally, our Saturday school typically begins after winter recess. Our Saturday school is designed to assist students as they prepare to take state assessments. The Saturday school program this school year is likely to start well before winter break. We are navigating uncharted waters, and it is easy for us to become overwhelmed by the daunting learning losses and the widening of the achievement gap that is likely to occur. The time is now, however, for us to plan on how we can utilize the resources at our disposal more strategically and more intentionally, so that we can ensure that our students, no matter their background or station in life, are best poised to achieve their dreams and reach their God-given potential. For us, that has meant thinking very differently about how we conduct ourselves and how we deliver services for children and families, from serving nearly 3 million meals in the community to distributing 115,000 mobile devices and 9,000 internet hotspots, to setting up call centers to support teachers, parents, and students with distance learning, to developing summer and year-long recovery programs aimed at supporting students with very deliberate experiences. It will take all that and more for us to return to a sense of normalcy. The actions that we take now will indelibly determine how long the road to recovery will take and how long our nation's children will need to be on par with one another and their peers across the globe. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you found that helpful. We're all kind of trying to figure out this work and these challenges that are ahead of us together. And I feel very strongly in the power of collective thinking and collaborating with peers across our country. So I see that we have around 76 participants. I did answer one question in that was sent in the Q&A, and I look forward to more questions during this time that we have for Q&A. I also urge you to follow me on Twitter if you'd like. I am at Miami CAO. And the reason for that is because I frequently memorialize or post different things that we're doing in the district, many of which I've shared with you during this webinar today, so you can kind of keep up with us and what we're thinking. And certainly we're open to feedback, and we love to hear what other districts and school districts are doing across the country. In terms of SOAR, so I'm going to try to work a little backwards here, which is securing opportunities for academic recovery. That plan is kind of being laid out right now as we speak. We're flying that plane while we're building it. We are using predominantly Title I funds for SOAR. And just yesterday, we received our allocation from the state for the stimulus dollars for CARES. And so we're looking at that allocation now to determine what pieces of SOAR can be funded through that. There's a lot of need in all of our districts for so many other things that are eligible under CARES, but certainly instructional recovery needs to be one of them, among sanitation and a number of other things. The other thing that we're doing is we're working with our state to try to relax a little bit some of the requirements in terms of funding. For instance, for SOAR, one of the things that we discussed with the state of Florida leaders just last week was helping us and taking off the financial burden for our rising 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, and allowing us to use adult ed dollars for components of SOAR that are servicing strictly high school students. And so we do that. We use adult ed dollars frequently in the summer just for course recovery, which is very limited, course recovery, credit recovery, and that's eligible. But there's some nuances around the courses that we're utilizing during the summer for us to be allowed to use those dollars in adult ed for our high school SOAR participants. So that helps ease it as well. So between Title I and CARES and hopefully adult ed, we think we may be able to definitely do this. Now we're doing it in chunks. We have to chunk everything, otherwise our minds will be blown. And so we're ready now. We have letters out to students that are in summer A. If you remember that continuum, that kind of arrow looking continuum that I had on one of the slides, we're just now wrapping up distance learning phase 2. Our students' last day of school is June 3rd. Yay, we made it. We're celebrating with all of our teachers that we made it through this. And then the following Monday, June 8th, will be the first day of Summer A SOAR. And that will be a subset of the entire plan. And then we have Summer B. So we're kind of ramping up Summer A now, getting letters out, enrolling kids, hiring teachers, and then we'll move on to Summer B. And all the while, we're also planning for what reopening in the fall looks like, which will be interesting. And then the final thing, because there was some questions around, not the final thing, but another thing around Essential Start, is the vision is that every school, we have more than 400 schools, that every school have an earlier start to the school year, but for a subset of students. That began with social distancing, having schools at 25% capacity, but really what it ended up being was also what we can afford, right? It's very expensive on the labor side of the house to run our schools. Just to give you an idea, 2 weeks in Miami-Dade in every school is about $12 million. So we are looking at whether or not we're going to be able to do that to that extent, or whether we have to do satellite schools and have kids reporting into feeder patterns or select schools in different areas as opposed to every school. But the vision and the ideal situation is every school, and we're still working on that. Let's see, no particular order. Carl, have you thought about strategies for scheduling for elementary kids, staggered, online, and hybrid? Actually, it's not just elementary kids, so I'll talk a little bit about that. It seems like it's a popular topic right now. I currently have a team right now that's working on reopening. I just left a meeting with them. What we're doing is we have a number of groups, cross-functional groups that are working on different models, because every model, if we're trying to drive the models by instruction, we drive everything in Miami-Dade through the lens of instruction. But what happens is each of the models have different implications in terms of logistics, in terms of transportation, in terms of collective bargaining with our unions, in terms of maybe lobbying for some legislative flexibility. So what we're doing is we're trying to create like these almost like Navy SEAL teams of people that are focusing on one specific target, whether it's SOAR, whether it's reopening, whether it's, but then at the table are people that are not just instructional, but people that are kind of a part of all those moving parts. But essentially, and I'll only speak instructionally for the purposes of this webinar, is we are looking at 3 different things. We are, first, what we did about 2 weeks ago is we surveyed our parents. So we sent out a survey to all of our parents. We are pretty popular and we have a pretty big footprint on social media. So we use a lot of social media to get the word out, robocalls, emails, etc., to the homes. And then we've asked all of our parents to please complete a survey. I haven't looked at the respondents today, but we were at probably like 130,000 responses last week. And so what we're looking at, there was a pretty comprehensive survey asking them all kinds of questions related to their comfort level around what are they thinking in the fall? How do they feel about brick and mortar? Do they feel like they would be comfortable sending a child to school if A? If so, then how about B? And so we put up a bunch of different scenarios. No survey is going to be all inclusive of every potential scenario, but we try to be as broad, and then with some cascading questions within questions to see what they were feeling. So for instance, we asked, the first question probably was something around a traditional school days. I'm comfortable sending my child to school on August 24th for a traditional school day face-to-face as norm, traditional. And then if they said no, then a cascading question, a subsequent question will come out to those respondents, and it would say, okay, I'm not comfortable, but I would be comfortable doing A, B, or C. Select from that, and then cascading from that. And so we are right now, it closed on Wednesday. Today's Friday. It closed on Wednesday. I have a team that's doing the analysis. We won't be able to see anything really until probably Monday or Tuesday. I'll present it to cabinet and we'll share with our board. But preliminarily, when we've looked in, and not very deep because there's many questions, it looks like a three-way split. Like we have parents that are ready to send their kids to brick and mortar. And then we have other parents that want some sort of hybrid, like part distance learning, part online, and part brick and mortar. And others that only want a distance learning, remote learning kind of experience for their child next year. It's complicated because we know that that's how they felt when they completed the survey. We probably will more than likely continue to survey them and give them a little break, and then maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks down the road, survey them again as conditions change locally. But right now, and without looking at it by grade band, because we will be breaking it down by grade band, because elementary parents may feel one way, but middle school parents may feel a different way. High school parents may feel a different way. And by the way, I forgot, I neglected to say this. In the survey, they had to respond for every child in their home. So it wasn't a generic answer for all my kids. If I had 3 kids, I responded for each child, and we took into consideration their grade. That's important. And so now what we look at the data at the aggregate level without looking at it by grade, preliminarily, they're split 3 ways. A third of them want to go face-to-face, a third of them want a hybrid approach, a third of them want full distance learning. And even within the hybrid approach, we ask questions related to shifts. We ask questions related to a satellite school. We ask questions related to on 2 days, off 2 days, on 4 days, off 4 days. And what I mean by that is moving from face-to-face to remote, face-to-face to remote kind of models. So we're looking at all of those options. And frankly, we believe very strongly in choice. And what we're trying to do right now is try to figure out how to operationalize delivering all 3 of those options to our families. Frankly, when parents don't want to send in the kids to school, it actually helps the situation in terms of the social distancing piece. The biggest concern is engagement, obviously, all the social emotional stuff that happens in school and all the learning beyond the content that happens in school. And then also the fact that we want this continuity of instruction, like a seamless, coherent, instructional experience or learning experience for students. And so we have to develop those mechanisms that whether I'm in brick and mortar today or whether I'm home tomorrow, that it's somewhat seamless for me in terms of progression. That's hard. That's really, really hard. And we are looking at third-party providers to try to help us with that. We do not have a learning management system, which makes it even more complicated. We were in the process of procuring one when closures occurred. We do use Microsoft Teams as our platform, and Microsoft has been excellent about customizing a lot of things on that platform. So it's a quasi LMS where students are rostered, et cetera. Teachers can provide assignments, et cetera. And certainly it's a communication tool, but it doesn't have any content. So the issue right now is how fast can the academic team develop content? How much of it can we buy third party? And how much of it do we leave up to teachers, and how can we support teachers? So that's pretty much the issue at hand. Let me see if I can find some other good questions on here. And Kelly, feel free to help me if you want. Yeah, so Jennifer is asking questions around, Jennifer Jensen, around supporting social distancing, safe practices, etc. Yes, but that's a whole different seminar. This is really more on the instructional side of the house, but I will recommend that you look at some of the stuff that McKinsey has put out. McKinsey has put out some great recommendations. The CDC has guidelines for schools as well, and those are pretty much the benchmarks that we're using to develop our own local plans. Let's see, as we look to, no, I already answered that question. Yes, so Stanley says, our district is considering all scenarios, even considering only elementary on rotating days and middle and high remote, waiting on the governor of Virginia before final decisions are made. So for us, we started naturally because we think that we know everything. We started naturally developing models. And then we had to kind of pump the brakes and say, what do our parents want? We're no longer the only business in town, at least in South Florida or in Florida. There's lots of choice for parents. Parents can use vouchers and send their kids to private school. They can opt to do homeschooling. They can send their child to a charter school. And so at the end of the day, we want to maintain our enrollment and maintain keep our kids. And so we know that parents can vote with their feet. So our posture is to try to get a really good sense of how parents are feeling and what they're comfortable with in terms of their student safety and their ongoing learning, and then develop models and iterate around that. Let's see, will iReady be accessible for the students over the summer? Is your county satisfied with the product? So iReady has been a great partner for us. They've been partners now, don't quote me, I'm not going to remember, probably 6 years or so. They have been wonderful partners, and their assessments have given us a pretty good predictive measures in terms of state assessment. So we're very happy with the product. Like anything, we don't want it to be abused. We don't want it to replace a teacher. Certainly a computer-assisted instruction is fantastic, but it should never replace a high-quality teacher. And so one of the things that we noticed, and you saw in my webinar, is that as soon as we closed schools, a lot of kids and teachers leaned on those platforms, iReady being one of them, and they were being overused. And what happens when they're overused is the students progress too quickly and they actually top out of the content, and then they start going into content that really doesn't pertain to their grade level or their standards in their grade. And so the answer, the long answer to your question is no, we're turning off iReady over the summer. We're giving kids a break, and we're developing a lot more synchronous lessons for students over the summer. Let's see. Can you type the name of the Parent Academy website? Yes, it's Parent Academy. Am I going to spell this right? Miami.com, I believe, but it needs an HTTP. So I'll wait for Kelly. She's really good about giving you the full link while I'm trying to answer questions. So if Kelly, if you can put that in the chat, that'd be great. And that website is free to use for anyone. Lots of great webinars on there for parents in 3 languages. Every week, we're pretty much putting up a new topic or a new webinar for our parents. It's really helped us get the word out and help have parents really feel more comfortable in this environment, understand their role in this environment, and then support their children, which ultimately is supporting our teachers. So Lena says, what funding categories are being used for extended school and early start? I think I might have answered that already. Saturday school. So Saturday school we've always had Saturday school in Miami-Dade. We fund it through Title I as well. It's only for our Title I schools, and then our non-Title I schools, if the principal has money in his or her budget, they also budget for it. And so essentially what we're looking at doing Saturday school, the impetus for Saturday school is to prepare children for state assessments. And so those usually begin right after winter recess. So this year, coming up, we have decided that what we're going to be doing is we are going to start it before winter recess. So give them an earlier start to Saturday Academy. Before we head out, and I certainly will try to answer questions that I haven't answered after this, the time that we have. But before we head out, I just want to make it clear that, and we all have to really kind of be in concert on this, is that the loss of learning is not parallel in terms of days. Okay, so if the students missed 50 days of schooling, it's not an equal 50 days is what we're going to need to kind of make up that time. We already know through the research in the summer slide that they slide deeply, and they're going to slide a lot more with this additional quarter, if you will, of schooling lost. And so it's not equally relationable. And so we believe in our heart of hearts, because we're going to have kids opting to come into school, doing distance learning, coming in with huge gaps, which all of the strategies that I shared with you today are our attempts to mitigate as much as we can those gaps. And we feel like we're making some inroads. Is that next year, I'm not saying it's a wash, but I am saying that policymakers, folks that are in accountability offices, and just people that are in this industry in general have to understand that it will take an entire school year for us to kind of stabilize and really be almost at par where we were on March 13th, on or about March 13th, when our schoolhouses were closed. And so with that understanding, I think that we can make great strides next year, but it will not, be equal in terms of the days lost during COVID-19. I think that's all the time we have. I'll hand it over to Kelly, and I'll try to answer as many other questions virtually as I can. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. So thank you again, Marie. I know you've been presenting all day, so thank you so much for being a part of this session with us. Again, special thank you to all of our sponsors that make this event possible: Catch On, Classcraft, FileWave, Global Teletherapy, GradeCam, and Sanford Programs. I want to remind everyone that if you log into the Conference Hub, there is a download section. You'll be able to find any related information from any of the sessions today there, as well as the recording of the session. However, we are still recording sessions today, so they're not there just quite yet, but probably early next week you'll be able to find those. And again, go visit some of our sponsor booths. You'll find some Passport to Prizes buttons on all of their pages. Drop a note, say hi to our sponsors, and thank them for making this event possible for us. Our next session will begin at 2 o'clock, so we have a little bit of time. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll see you at the next session. Thanks.